Hey guys, in this video we're going to be checking out this guy. This is the FuriBee X215 Pro, and it's a 215mm motor, but this is a slightly stretched X-frame, and I'll just show you really quickly that it is longer front to back than it is from side to side. So it is about 164mm, 63mm front to back, and then side to side it's coming in at about 145mm, so it's a little bit narrower side to side than it is front to back, so it would classify as a stretched X, not a true X frame. And this is kind of similar to the D-Quad's Obsession frame and also that Real ACC frame that I reviewed a while back, but this frame does not have that flaw that caused my arm to break, where they had the extra cutouts for the 1806 motors. That was kind of annoying. This one just has the cutouts for the, in this case this is a 2206 2600 kV motor, and the pattern on here on the carbon fiber is really interesting. I don't know if that's some sort of a fiberglass overlay or something, but that's, I don't think the carbon fiber is actually made like that, but it's a very interesting pattern. You got that on the arms here and on the side plates as well. It's a pretty interesting design. Now the arms themselves should be about 4mm, I believe. Yeah, coming in exactly 4mm, so should be very sturdy. It is 3K carbon, so it's definitely a stronger form of carbon. The frame design does have interchangeable arms or replaceable arms here, so you have a little sandwich here. I believe that replacement arms should be available within a few weeks on Gearbest. They're not currently available, but they usually come out later. These metallic side plates here are made of aircraft aluminum according to the product specs, and then you got these additional carbon side plates. I think this is where the camera will screw into. That's right there. It's, the camera is mounted there, and you can adjust your angle with that screw, and you can get some major camera tilt if you want. That's pretty crazy. It gets probably 70 degrees or so. Not going to be flying like that, but if you want the camera angle, you can get that. Now the camera they're using here is interesting. This is a 16:9 camera, I believe. It looks like the Eachine C800T camera, and I can tell because it uses this OSD joystick in the back. Now this is saying that this is a 1200 TV line camera, so I'm not exactly sure if that's the same as what was on the Eachine spec. So it might be a slightly different camera, different variant, but I think this is a CMOS camera, and I'm pretty sure it's the same one. Just they don't have a name for it in the product spec as to where it came from, but that looks a lot like the Eachine camera that I reviewed a few weeks back. So you get it looks like an XM Plus receiver here, free sky receiver with dual antennas, so it's a full range receiver, and the stack here is really nice. It's the flight controller is the Holybro Kukute F4. It's got built-in OSD. It's a very nice flight controller. The stack on the third board here on top here is the video transmitter. Apparently it goes from 0 to 600 milliwatts, and then you can use a single button here to change your band's channel and power using that little indicator there. And then you got a RP SMA connector here for your antenna, and it does include a Pagoda antenna here that will go on the top right there. The 4-in-1 EC is a 30 amp BLHeli S, so do D-Shot 600, and then you got a buzzer back here and some LEDs that just like they just have the zip tied on in the back here, but it doesn't look like that'll be falling off. Now the soldering on this is okay. I've seen better. So it looks like they did, at least on mine, kind of quick. It's a little dull. They could have used some solder that had a little more flux in it, but should be okay. They have all of the motor wires heat shrinked here, and looks like it's pretty secure. It's not moving around at all, so I'm not expecting any problems there. The props that they're using are 50-48 props, and a lot of the ready to flies are using this prop. I don't know who makes them, but this design has shown up on a lot of the ready to flies. Now they're using these bullet style prop nuts on here, and they're using reverse nuts on, I think it's This one, that's reversed. No, this is regular. This is reversed over here. And I don't particularly like these very much, so I'm going to be getting rid of these and using lock nuts instead. These tend to sometimes spin off if you're doing hard maneuvers, because the braking of the motor from the ESC is so hard that sometimes these will just spin off in mid-flight and then you'll just crash because the prop will go flying off. So I will be replacing these with lock nuts, and I wish that the manufacturers would no longer use the reverse threaded ones anymore. Just use the regular nuts for all four motors. It's not really necessary if you use proper lock nuts. So note for the manufacturer here to change that in the future. Overall, this looks like a pretty solid design. I think it'll fly well. Obviously, we'll have to find out. Should be pretty durable. It's pretty hefty, so let me just stick the antenna here and then we can get a weight measurement. So it's coming in at 340 grams, so a little on the heavier side, but it's a stronger frame, beefier motors, and also the side plates are aluminum, so we got a lot of strong components here, so we'll have to see how it flies with the additional weight. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take this to the computer, plug it in, and see what we got here. Probably have Betaflight 317. We're just going to go ahead and fly with the stock settings, and I'll make some tweaks to the PIDs and rates in the OSD, because this does have a Betaflight OSD, and we'll just go from there. I'll show you what you got out of the box. Okay, so let's connect this up and see what we got, and we are on Betaflight 3.20, and they're running the firmware released on July 13th, 2016. I believe that's RC3. I'm not sure if I want to leave it on that or maybe upgrade. I will leave it on that for the initial flight, just so that you guys don't have to deal with any flashing and that kind of hassle. So I'm going to leave that on what it is. I'm kind of surprised it comes with 3.2 because it's 3.2 is still beta or release candidate yet. So interesting. Well, the board is the KTV1, which is the Kukute. All very nice. And let's see here. We have our receiver on UR3, and I've already bound it, so it should show up on the receiver tab. We'll take a look at that in a second. It's coming out of the box with one-shot 125. I know that these EACs can do D-shot 600, so I'm going to switch this to D-shot 600 because I just feel like that's a pretty easy switch for you guys. All you gotta do is that, and then just do the reboot. So we'll do that. Leave pretty much everything else the same. Serial receiver S-Bus, that's for FreeSky. XM Plus, that's okay. Let's see here. The LED strip, black box, all good. Air mode, all good. OSD, okay. It's all good. I'm gonna leave all of this the same. Go ahead and reboot. And to failsafe, I'll just leave this alone as well. PID tuning, looks like these are default PIDs, and I'll go ahead and I'll fly it on the default PIDs, and then I'll adjust these in the OSD if I need to. And let's see if the receiver is working okay. Yes, it is. I did change the channel map to match my radio because the default in here was TAER, and my radio has AETR as the default. So just check this and make sure that your channels are moving in the correct direction. So always check that. So now we're going to leave everything else here the same. We have a mode for arming. So it's on switch. One of my aux switches is for arming, and they have angle on aux 2 and horizon on aux 2. So that's okay. I'll leave that all in there. Nothing in adjustments. Let's see what's going on in the OSD. I'm going to turn off some of this clutter. It distracts me, so I'm going to turn off the sidebars and the flight mode. I'll leave the current draw because it does have a current sensor, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of information we get off of that, if it's accurate or not. Hit save. We got LED strip, and we got 4 LEDs on here, but there's 7 or 8 of them in here for some reason. It's kind of interesting. I'll just leave this alone. Not sure why they might have used a different LED when they programmed this. And I think that should do it. We'll go ahead and we'll take it out for a fly. So I'm just going to be flying with the stock PIDs that it came with from Betaflight 3.2. I think it's RC2 or RC3. should fly pretty well. Just gonna see how the quad feels. Just gonna get a feel for how locked in or what kind of pit adjustments I need to make. So I'm just gonna be doing some back and forth, kind of boring flying here at the beginning. But I can tell right away that it feels fairly, well, I wouldn't say super locked in, but it's fairly stable and predictable. And being a stretch duct, it does feel a little bit like there's more resistance on the pitch axis. So changes and inputs you give on the pitch axis are a little sluggish, and I guess that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your perspective as a racing pilot or freestyle pilot. So anyway, this is probably my first stretched X-frame, so it's just giving this a try. And I'm noticing here that the camera was actually really good. Now, it doesn't really show as well in the DVR recording as it did live in the goggles. The color reproduction was excellent. This was a kind of an interesting kind of, you get some white puffy clouds in the blue sky, and you know, the way it looked in the goggles looked pretty impressive. It's 16:9, 1200 TV line, so very high resolution. The DVR recording just doesn't do it justice. So I'm just going to keep on flying it around here. I'm just getting a feel for the way it's tuned. I think that I can do some adjustments here. It just really depends on whether you like it. I just feel like it's a little loose on the P gains and maybe a little bit also maybe too high in the D gains. So probably need to make some minor adjustments, but for the most part I feel like it's flying pretty well. So I'm going to start pushing it a little bit harder here, and as I start to do that, I forget that I'm kind of at the end of the battery here. You can see I'm at like 14.4 volts, 14.2, and as I start doing more harder throttle punch outs, and as I start pressing the throttle here towards the end of the battery, I forget that when you do that sometimes you get death roll, and this is what happens here. There was no actual damage to the quad after the crash. I did inspect it. However, something that is not going to be very obvious to a lot of you guys is you should, for this particular flight controller, the Kokute, you're going to have to check after a crash that there isn't anything touching the gyro. The gyro is sitting on a separate board that's connected via a ribbon cable, and if like a wire or something, like if the gyro is loose, then if anything is touching it, then vibrations are going to come through whatever is vibrating or whatever is touching it. And apparently this is what's going on here. As I start flying around, I think about halfway through my flight here, I start realizing that there's a little bit of a yaw twitch, like right there, just right there that occurred there, and just right there as well. It's very subtle, and unless you're an experienced pilot, you're not going to know what that is, or even be able to recognize it. But I could tell that it was flying differently from the first battery. And this is because after I landed and I took the quad home and I looked at it, there's a wire that goes from the flight controller to the receiver, and that was actually shifted and was actually wedged in between the video transmitter and the gyro, and that was actually causing some vibrations to hit the gyro. And then when that happens on this particular board, you're going to get some weird stuff happening. In this case, it showed up as a yaw twitch. It could show up in some other different ways. It depends on what's touching it and how it's vibrating. And that's kind of the flaws of this design, is that now there's a little board on top of the main board, and so you're going to need more space between between the flight controller and whatever you stick on top of that. So they probably could have used a bigger standoff between the flight controller and the video transmitter to put a little more space there, so that when things shift around, they're not touching the gyro or getting wedged inside between the gyro and, in this case, the video transmitter. So that's why you're seeing some sort of twitching here, and right there again is another one. That's probably just some D-term oscillation or prop wash, but I wasn't getting that before. So just keep that in mind. There's another one right there. So if you are flying this around and you see weird stuff happening, it's probably because something is touching the gyro. And so you got to go there and move your wires and make sure that nothing is doing that. Anyway, that's the end of this review. Let me know if you have any questions. Hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.